What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Week 8 Spirit Seeker Devlog. Citrus here, ready to show off a ton of progress that has been made in this past week because of that playtest that was coming up. Not only leading up to that was there a ton of development, there was also a ton of development as a result of the feedback I received there. And there's really just a ton going on, so I'm just going to kind of cover each thing briefly and just really try to show off as much as I can here. As you can see, the enemies actually now flash to indicate when they've been hit, which is something that resulted from the feedback. A lot of players had trouble telling if the enemies were hit or not, and that is perfectly reasonable, and it wasn't too hard to be able to actually just add something that shows, hey, you're hitting these guys. And now I can actually throw my swords, so there's some ranged combat for the player as well as the enemies. I don't think that was developed by the last time I did a devlog. So yeah, there's enemies with crossbows, they will shoot at you. There's a much tougher crossbow enemy later on that will fire a bunch of bolts in a really short time. It's pretty dangerous. A lot of players have struggled to defeat that thing, and I think in balance changes going forward, there might not be as many in the first level, all things considered. One of the really interesting things I learned from the playtest was just how easy this game becomes when you playtest it a ton on your own, and so it's hard to gauge game balance without other people playtesting it that aren't you, because you also understand how everything works on a very mechanical level. So that can give you an edge that your average player won't have either. And the maze pieces are a lot bigger now. They also have like a roof over them. I don't know if that's going to be a permanent change. I genuinely can't even remember what I was working on when I decided to make that change and just what exactly was going through my head. Yeah, I might need to get checked out for dementia or something. I cannot remember for the life of me why I changed these to be the way that they are now. I think it might have had something to do with trying to make it easier to detect which tiles are not going to have an empty space for a power-up. But that doesn't quite make sense to me, because yeah, now the power-ups are randomly generated, so there was an attempt to be able to check the various places where I will spawn these power-ups and make sure there's not like a solid cube wall thing there that would prevent the player from even getting to that area, so there's no point in putting a power-up there. So that didn't quite work out. There was a lot going on to try and make it work. That was frustrating, like genuinely. I put so much effort into trying to find a way to like check, oh, here's that was one of those enemies that shoot you really quickly. They have a very little health though, so as you can see, it died pretty quick, and I think I was chucking my swords at it through the wall, which is something that's possible and definitely needs to change. Here's another one. He might live a little bit longer. And yeah, the camera movement's a little iffy going backwards, but yes. This is one of the great bugs about the game, where you can get stuck in walls if too many enemies push you in there. And because the enemies have like an animated sword swing now, they can reach players within the walls, so that's probably something I should get to work on fixing, all things considered. But as I was saying, yeah, you can throw the sword through walls, you can get knocked into walls by enemies, but they have like cool sword swing animations now, so that's a cool thing. Not everything is breaking. Some things are still cool about this game, I promise. And they will all be fixed in due time. I have sort of all the time in the world, really. The only thing I have to worry about is possibly pitching this as a project that might get worked on at my college next year, so that's kind of the next big milestone thing, but the milestones have done nothing but help me. If the week of this playtest was any indication, I've just really felt like I've been making so much progress lately, and I'm sure that's probably fairly obvious, because I think like just on a visual level, even just looking at the game, it probably looks quite a bit different from how it was looking in the game dev log for week 7, I think it was. Yeah, just before I had a pretty long night before the playtest, up until 2 a.m. working on it quite a bit, and then yeah, there's just been so much motivation and reason to work on it since. So I've just been doing a lot, following the playtest, trying to meet those requests that players were making about, fixing the camera. That's something that's a little bit better. It was going into walls a lot during the playtest. It's still a little bit janky, especially I think since now I have diagonal movement. That was another thing some players complained about, is you always rotated based on where the camera was facing, but relative to where you were at, you could only move the cardinal directions. But now there's diagonal movement as well, and I think especially diagonal backwards is an angle that the camera has a lot of problems with right now. So there's definitely more tweaks and fine-tuning that needs to happen with the camera as things stand, but it's still improving. It's gotten better from where it used to be. And that's just a fantastic thing to see, is all these systems that have been in the game, some of them for a long time. Of course, the camera's been here practically since day one, but seeing them get better, the movement too, that's been here since day one, but it's still getting better, still improving. And that's another thing that's really cool, is not just like adding all this new stuff, but seeing everything else sort of get fine-tuned and improved upon as this project continues to be in development. And so looking at the next week, I think some of the things I'm going to work on is, maybe tweaking the camera a little bit, because I had a friend of mine playtest, and they straight up said they got motion sick from how like jerky the camera can be, I think, and especially with that backwards diagonal movement does quite a bit. I think I'm very confident in my gameplay, which is why I'm moving forward a lot of the times, but for players who are just starting to experience it, I feel like they back away from enemies quite a bit, and so it becomes more of a problem for them. So yeah, camera tweaks are probably coming, and I'm thinking a system where you level up from killing enemies, and you can get like permanent buffs based on how many enemies you've killed. Not based on, just like you get XP from killing the enemies, and from that you're able to level up and get more permanent improvements, like maybe just you have sprint all the time suddenly, or you have a little more health, or you can double jump all the time. Just things like that to kind of give the player a sense of progression and also incentivize killing the enemies, because apparently the incentive of you don't want them to be chasing you for the entire time you're completing this maze isn't enough for some players, and a lot of players I saw would just ignore the enemies once they realized your only objective is to reach the end of the maze. They're like, oh, well, I can just ignore these enemies then. And then they'd go down a dead end, and an entire horde of enemies would end up behind them. Not just because they haven't killed any, but also because my balancing is a little rough. A lot of the enemies are just like clumped up. There's a ton in one spot, and so whenever they do catch up to you, there's always a lot of them. But yeah, just ignoring them all the time would just lead to like these massive pile-ups as soon as a player hit a dead end. Like so, I haven't been really killing them because there's not too much to show off with combat aside from those improved animations and the ranged throwing. But yeah, the incentive of now you can get like permanent buffs, you can get a level up and improve your character by defeating these enemies, that might encourage players to kill them, and then hopefully there won't be as many situations with massive hordes of enemies just piling onto the player and the player not being able to fight back reasonably, because even with the power-ups, if you've got too many of them, you're not going to be able to kill them fast enough. So yeah, those are probably the goals for this coming week, and I'm really especially happy with the progress from this week, and getting to see people play my game was a phenomenal experience. So I am very much hyped about this project right now, very much going to continue working on it, and I hope you guys continue to enjoy seeing the progress. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll see you next week.